You know, when we think of ancient South India, three great kingdoms usually pop into our heads: the Cholas, the Pandyas, and of course, the Cheras. But one of them, the Cheras, had this unique advantage, this perfect spot on the coast that let them become absolute masters of the global spice trade. They built a bridge between India and the Roman Empire that honestly changed the world. So let's dive into the incredible story of the Chera Dynasty.
To really get the Cheras, we've got to start with a really simple question. What on earth did the most powerful empire in the West want so badly from the southern tip of India? I mean, think about it. The answer to that is the key to this entire story.
And that brings us right here to our first section, the Spice Kings Arise. We're going to see how the very land the Cheras controlled wasn't just their home, it was the foundation of their incredible power and their influence on the world stage.
To understand the Cheras, you really have to start with the geography. Their homeland, which is pretty much modern-day Kerala, was like the perfect recipe for trade empire. Inland, you've got these lush forests and fertile valleys, just packed with valuable resources. But the real game changer, their trump card, was that strategic coastline on the Arabian Sea. All those natural harbors weren't just docks, they were gateways to the entire known world.
Of course, the Cheras weren't alone in this. Not at all. They were part of this powerful trio called the Movendar, which means the three crowned kings, and that included their famous rivals, the Cholas and the Pandyas. This constant jostling for power, this competition, really defined the politics of ancient South India for centuries.
And their history is a long one, and it kind of unfolds in two major acts. First, you have the early Cheras, part of what's called the Sangam age, this amazing era of Tamil poetry, which kicks off around the 3rd century BCE. Then there's this big gap in the historical record, and boom, they reemerge as the later Cheras in the 8th century CE, before finally fading away about 400 years after that.
All right, let's get to the heart of the Chera story, their unbelievable wealth. Now, this wasn't just built on conquering territory. It was built on commerce. We're talking about the legendary port of Muziris, and a spice so valuable, they literally called it black gold.
I want you to just picture it, a buzzing, cosmopolitan city where Roman, Arab, and Tamil merchants are all haggling over goods from every corner of the known world. That was Muziris. It was the absolute epicenter of this massive trade network that funneled all the riches of the East all the way to the Mediterranean. It was one of the planet's first truly globalized cities.
So what were the Romans spending all their money on? Well, the undisputed star of the show was black pepper, famously called black gold because it was worth a fortune. But the shopping list didn't stop there. You had fragrant cardamom and cinnamon, exotic ivory, and all sorts of dazzling precious stones. And these weren't just fancy trinkets. These things shaped Roman food, medicine, and status. It made the Cheras completely indispensable.
And we know this isn't just some tall tale because, well, we have the receipts. Archaeologists have literally dug up hordes of Roman gold coins all across Kerala. This just shows you the sheer scale of this trade. The Romans weren't just bartering, they were paying in solid gold, pumping a level of wealth into the Chera kingdom that paid for their armies, their temples, everything.
But, you know, the Cheras were so much more than just savvy businessmen. Their legacy goes way beyond trade. It's woven deep into the culture and spirituality of the region. So let's take a look at the people, what they believed, and their most celebrated heroes.
To help put a face to the dynasty, let's talk about two key kings. First, there's Chera Dynasty. He's one of the earliest rulers we even know about, a foundational figure from those ancient Sangam poems. But the real rock star, the most famous of them all, is Senguttuvan Chera, a warrior king whose adventures were so epic they became the stuff of legend.
And what a legend it is. The epic poems tell this amazing story of Senguttuvan marching his army north, just dominating his rivals to prove his power. But his quest wasn't just about military glory. He then travels all the way to the Himalayas to get a single sacred stone. And with that stone, he creates a whole new cult dedicated to the goddess Kanagi. What's so brilliant about this story is how it perfectly blends military might with this deep spiritual mission. That's what cemented his legacy.
And that warrior identity was absolutely central to who the Cheras were. Their royal symbol was the bow and arrow. It's simple, but it's powerful, and it perfectly captures their spirit of courage and their readiness for battle, whether they were defending their ports or expanding their reach.
Now, the spiritual world of the Cheras wasn't static either. It really evolved over their long history. In the early days, their beliefs were kind of a mix of local traditions and Vedic rituals. But during that later Chera period, this powerful new religious wave called the Hindu Bhakti movement swept across the land. This was all about intense, personal devotion to a god, not just complex rituals. It was so influential that one of their own kings, Kulasekara Alvar, actually became a revered saint, celebrated for his amazing poetry.
But, as we know, no empire lasts forever. So let's look at how this great dynasty, after centuries of power and prosperity, eventually faded from the map, marking the end of a truly incredible era.
So what brought this great power to its knees? Well, there wasn't one single event. It was more like a death by 1,000 cuts. They were in these constant, brutal wars with their great rivals, the Cholas, which just drained their money and weakened their armies. At the very same time, conflicts were breaking out inside the kingdom, making them unstable. All this created a power vacuum, which allowed smaller, local powers to rise up and just start chipping away at Chera territory, until eventually the dynasty just dissolved.
So, when all is said and done, what should we remember about the Cheras? They were the critical link between ancient India and the West. They were champions of some of the most beautiful literature in the world. They built a global trading hub from nothing, and their legacy, their fingerprint, is still all over the rich culture and traditions of Kerala today.
And that really just leaves us with a final thought to chew on. The Cheras built their entire world on connecting distant cultures through trade, and in doing so, they fundamentally changed their own society and the societies they traded with. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? As we live in our own hyper-connected world, how do those ancient routes and old relationships still echo in the way we live, the things we eat, and how we talk to each other today?